Hi, everybody. Welcome to Feedback. I'm Nick Vole. A student from Vancouver School of Arts and Academics is the regional winner of the Congressional App Challenge, combining his love of coding with his love of art. He won the 3rd Congressional District and was one of just 300 apps to win the National Congressional App Challenge. More than 3,000 students nationwide submitted apps. And I'm joined now by Ian MacDonald, the young man who won the competition. Ian, thanks for being with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here.
First off, tell us, how does it feel to be the winner of this pretty cool competition?
It feels really good to have won something like this. I haven't really entered many programming competitions, despite the fact I've been doing game development for many years at this point. So being able to test my skills against other people and get that competition feel and end up winning is just very validating, I think, for all the work I've put into learning game development and game design and all those skills.
Well, so for those who haven't seen your video yet, could you describe the inspiration for your game and how it kind of works?
Yeah, so Time to Recolor is a 2D puzzle platformer game. You're starting in this, it's a very minimalist looking world, and you have to just platform through puzzles and hit buttons and collect keys, and you're just trying to advance through the game. It's a fairly linear experience, and the big mechanic is rewinding time so that once you make a choice and get something and you unlock a door, you can rewind time to maybe go a different direction to solve different puzzles that I developed in the game. And that was really inspired by the fact that throughout the whole year of 2020, basically after March, time did not feel very real. Everything felt very distorted and strange. So I wanted to encapsulate that experience into just a game form because I thought it'd be an interesting way to reflect. So time became my primary mechanic for the game.
Seems like more of an exploration game as opposed to something maybe a little more stressful for the user.
That is exactly right. I didn't want to make a stressful game where you had to think quickly and solve things because it was a stressful year. No one needs more stress on top of that. So it is more of a very calm and chill game where you can go through it at a leisurely pace. I've beaten the game in 15 minutes, I think is my high score, but most people it takes them an hour or two to get through all the levels.
Sure. Well, you have an advantage, obviously.
I do. I know all the mechanics. I know all the secrets.
I think it's pretty interesting. So we've seen other winners from our school district in this competition, and typically they're from schools with science magnet programs. You go to the art school. How has the art school prepared you to be a coder and a developer?
Well, it definitely hasn't taught me any of the programming languages I need, but for me, that was always the part I felt more comfortable with. I like the logic, the math, the solving puzzles. So for me, the challenge of designing games is always the visuals, the graphics, the story. And VSAA has that artistic environment. I do film, I've done photography, graphic design, and I can take all those skills and add them to my existing programming skills, and that makes me much more well-rounded as a game developer than purely looking at how do I program in this programming language or solve this math thing. It gives me the interdisciplinary skills I needed, I think, to win the competition.
Sure. And all those coding skills, those came from you on your own, just being interested in this. Is that right?
Yup, so I think I started in elementary school, even I was interested in programming, but starting in 6th grade, I started just learning a couple different programming languages, finding what I liked. I've watched a lot of tutorials, read a lot of articles, all those things. And yeah, over the past years, I've just taught myself everything I need to know to be able to program games.
It's pretty incredible how much information is available out there on the web for teaching yourself these kinds of valuable skills. I mean, personally, I do some coding as part of my job too, and I've learned it all through YouTube and other, resources. Um, it's pretty amazing. Are you looking maybe down the road to make this more of a formal education?
Yes, I am. So I plan on majoring in computer science for college. That's what I've applied to for all my schools, and I haven't decided where I'll be attending in the fall, but I will be majoring in computer science because that is what I want to do as a career.
Sure. So let's go back to the beginning here. You saw, or how did you find out about this competition? And then what was your process of deciding on your game?
So I had seen this competition before sometime last year, early 2020. And it was in my head, and I didn't really think too hard about it. I was like, oh, that'd be interesting, but it's not due till October. That's a long way away. And things got a bit crazy. But this project itself actually started as a game jam project. I wanted to test my programming skills, and there was an online competition of a different sort over the summer on just a website, and they gave a prompt and you had 1 week to make the best game you could, and then all the games would be judged and the winner was going to get something. And I started working on Time to Recolor for that project, and I didn't win the competition, but I had a lot of fun with it, and I only put a week into it. And then I think it was like late September, I was looking through scholarships for college, and the Congressional App Challenge popped up on one of the websites, and I was like, I have a game I started working on that I really like, and I think it could fit the prompt of this competition. So I spent a couple more weeks polishing the game, and then I made my video. So it was a bit of just random chance that I happened to rediscover the contest, as well as already having a game I felt like was good enough to polish and submit by the deadline.
So you have an idea for a game. You think it's pretty solid. Where do you even begin to make a game? Like what programming languages are you using? Do you have to design graphics first, or what is the process of going from idea to playable game?
So the first thing I do is I open a Google Doc, and I make sure I have a basic idea written out. Because I've found over the years, if I start programming without knowing what I'm doing, it will go badly. Maybe it doesn't go badly for a week or a month, but eventually it will all come crumbling down if I'm not prepared. So I have that planning document. I just write out what I think I want to achieve. And then I open up, my preferred game engine is Unity 3D, which uses the C# programming language, it's powerful and it's flexible, and I can program for any platform, Windows, iOS, OS X, any of the things I want to program for. So I love working in Unity, and C# is great. It's my favorite language I've learned so far. And so I'll start programming just with basic, I'll have some squares or some cubes as the graphics, and I'll start just laying out the basic mechanics. But something I've found specifically that works for me is that if I don't get graphics put into the game within a reasonable time, I'll get tired of working on it, because it'll just, no matter how many interesting mechanics I can program in, if you're staring at blank squares all day and you're just making them move around, it doesn't feel like you've achieved anything. So for Time to Recolor, what I challenged myself to do was spend more of that time on graphics, because the mechanics aren't excessively complicated in themselves, but graphically I needed a player, and then I needed to animate the player. I needed a tile set for all the levels. I had to do post-processing and color grading to get all the special effects that add just all the little things. There's particles, there's all the items. So it's really a balance when you're a one-man team developing a game, of doing that programming, but knowing that graphics are what people are going to see, and that's how games are often judged at first glance. So they're very important. You have to have good visuals and even audio. I didn't make any of my audio, I downloaded it all with Creative Commons licenses, but having the graphics and the audio is equally, if not more at times, important than the programming itself.
Sure. Well, so you mentioned that you've been doing programming for years. Did you learn anything new in this process making this game?
Um, From a programming standpoint, no, I didn't have to learn any new mechanics or techniques to get anything done. It was a fairly straightforward. I think the biggest programming thing, if I was to say there was something I got better at, was using more physics for the player controller. There's multiple ways you can control a player, and for this one, I challenged myself to make it more physically accurate. So I had to look into, acceleration formulas and trigonometry to get all the collisions working. And so I applied a lot more math, which wasn't as difficult as I'd expected it to be, but it was just a little funny to me, because the things in geometry or calculus that I've learned that I never thought I could really apply, I was using to get the game working. But a bigger thing for me was the graphics on this one. I stretched myself a lot to make the graphics very cohesive with one another and also to keep like a solid theme throughout. Everything's very minimalist and very flat colors, but it still has that cohesion. And that was not something my previous games had often. I didn't usually work in 2D with that type of graphics.
That's interesting to me because you mentioned that the user, the player, thinks about the graphics, and they probably don't think about all that other stuff that goes into the game, math, physics, design, any of that. Do you think people, when you tell people about this, do they seem, I guess, what is their reaction to know all the things you had to go through to make even just a simple game like this?
They'll usually look at it and think it's really cool and be like, wow, I was not aware all of that went into it. Because you really don't think about all the things in a game or a program that have to be added in order to make it function. The only time you'll really think about those things is if a feature is really, really good or if something feels off. Those are the two times people really actively think about the programming that went into a game.
Sure. So you submit your game, you wait a couple of months, and you find out you won. What were you thinking when you got, that email or phone call?
I was very happy. I'd been waiting because they had said sometime in late December you'll get an email if you've won, and it was pretty late in December, so I had been a bit on edge waiting to see if I'd won, if I hadn't won, and so getting that was a great feeling because it just it made it seem like all my work was worth it and that I did have the skills that I thought I had, but now it had been proved in a competition that I was good at programming and that if I show my work, it is judged as being adequate and very, you know, yeah, that's about it, I think.
So you felt like you had a chance though, right?
Yeah, going into the competition, I wasn't sure. I looked into a bit of the past submissions, and I saw a lot of the submissions for the Congressional App Challenge across the country were oftentimes like apps that focused on some sort of like social or political issue or something. So I was unsure how the judges would take a game, which doesn't necessarily have a practical purpose from that viewpoint, but it's still, it was still a submission and it still fit the criteria. And then there was a newsletter sent out about the competition before a winner had been picked, and it had a link to the five other submissions and their videos. So I watched those, and there were some other really strong submissions. So I wasn't sure, but I felt like I definitely had a shot at winning.
Mhm. So you find out you win, you're the regional winner. What is next for your game after that? It goes to Washington D.C., is that correct?
Yes, I believe on the it'll be displayed on house.gov, which is their congressional website, and I think it will be displayed somewhere in Washington D.C. And then there's a event that's hosted for the winners of the Congressional App Challenge. I believe it's called the House of Code event, and that's coming up in a week or two. And there'll be some keynote speakers, and then I'll have an opportunity to present my game in a 5 minute presentation to all the other winners there. Everyone gets a chance to showcase their game, and there'll be Congress people there and some people from the game development industry. So I'm really excited for that event because that should be quite exciting.
Obviously, that's going to be a virtual event and not an in-person event, but
Unfortunately, yeah.
it's got to be pretty exciting to know that some like, congressmen and game professionals will be seeing your work and you'll have a chance to kind of get face to face virtually with those people.
It is cool. Yeah, it'll definitely be a fun experience just to network a little bit and to showcase my game and see what else people came up with around the country.
Is this game finished now? Are you moving on to other things? And if you're moving on to other things, what are you working on?
Yeah, so this game is finished. I've published it on a online game marketplace, itch.io, and it's free to download if anyone wants to play it. There's a web version and a PC version available. And I looked at it and I decided it really was complete enough that I didn't think I could add anything. I could add more levels and more colors to switch between, but it's good how it is. So right now, my project I'm working on two things right now, but the main one is a 3D platformer game because VSA, they have every senior make a senior project and we get 3-ish months to do that. So I'm trying to create an entire 3D platformer game. It's a bit of like a fantasy cartoon style, and it's just going to be a little adventure game, platforming, collecting items, a couple of enemies, something like Mario 64 essentially.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds
Yeah.
much harder too, I would imagine, to work in a 3D space than a 2D space.
It is. It's definitely it's a different challenge all around because instead of getting to create just simple two-dimensional graphics for all the visuals, I have to make 3D models and then I have to texture those and I have to work more with particles and all the physics is more complicated. Adding a third dimension makes everything harder. I've had to program shaders for it, which gets into other programming languages like high-level shader language and Unity's shader graph. So it's definitely a whole lot of stuff. And it's a bit of an ambitious goal to say I'll make a 3D platformer game in 3 months. I've put in 150 or so hours in the past 2 months on it, and I don't even have a single functional level. I have a lot of mechanics done, and I have a lot of items and abilities, but I don't have a single level put together because it takes so much time to get there.
Yeah, but that's great though. I mean, if you're going to develop these skills, you got to keep challenging yourself to try something you haven't done. So, I mean, if you want to do this for a living, obviously you're going to have these skills. So it's impressive to push yourself now, I'd say.
Yeah, I figure I have time right now to work on it and I can get school credit for it for, my core project, senior project for school. So it's a great thing to do. And I'm trying to learn all the industry standards things like version control using like GitHub and all those tools, just so when I put it up on a resume as an example of work, it'll look to be that industry quality where it would help me get, a scholarship or a career somewhere.
Okay, Ian, thanks for joining me. Congrats on your success. And I look forward to seeing some games you make in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. This has been a great experience.
For his efforts, Ian won Amazon Web Services web credits, a gift card from Southwest Airlines, and as he mentioned, his app is being hosted at the US Capitol for a year. In our interview, Ian mentioned itch.io as a place you can get the game, but an easier place is his website, ianmacdonald.me. You can download Time to Recolor or any of his other games. Ian is also a filmmaker, and you can see his works on his website also. Ian isn't the only VPS student who found success in this competition. From Skyview High School, a group of 4 students took 3rd place for their app called Diver City. It highlights marine conservation by challenging players to collect debris as they swim in the ocean. Claire Russell, Phoebe Abruzzese, Paige Barrett, and Emma Fancher worked on that app, and congrats to them as well. Thanks for watching. Remember, you can keep tabs with Vancouver Public Schools on our social media channels: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, I'm Nick Voll.